non-Americans of Reddit. What is the weirdest thing you have seen an American tourist do that would be considered very disrespectful, inappropriate in your country? Not by the round. In a pub in Ireland, when the pub round system had been explained to them, and they had happily taken drinks from everyone, and when it was their round, and everyone had empty glasses, and it was mentioned that think it's your round, and they responded, I think I'm good now, thanks, mortified for bringing them with me, and yes, I bought the round for everyone else on their behalf. I'm an American, but I was visiting England and touring the Tower of London. There was a cannon behind a rope with a do not touch or climb sign. This American woman lifted the rope and told her kid, maybe 7 years old, to go sit on the cannon so she could take a picture. The kid protested and said the sign said no. The woman said she didn't care, and ordered her kid to do it or she'd ground them. I was working a bar in Scotland. There was a woman one night with her daughter and she refused to pay with anything other than American cash. It was a super uncomfortable situation, me trying to explain how stupid it all was. Her daughter, who I think was living in Scotland, was trying to calm her down and trying to pay, but the mother kept pulling her hand away from the card machine saying, you people love our money. Our money is more important than yours. She kicked on for a solid 5 to 10 minutes. Her daughter ended up paying and leaving. Then she had to go at me for embarrassing her daughter, and she even left a review on TripAdvisor explaining the situation. She explained it perfectly, literally wrote herself as the bad guy in the review. Fucking mind-boggling how delusional this bird was. Probably only weird, but when on a flight back to the UK from the US, the American lady sat next to me, started asking questions about England about 40 minutes before landing, and not just like any local recommendations but really basic stuff like what currency do we use. It seemed like she had got on the plane knowing absolutely nothing about the UK, which blew my mind, not just from oh haven't you planned your trip, but having the confidence to do that. She seemed to think it was a small place and everything she wanted to see would be in front of her hotel. She was very polite and lovely about it in a naive way though. In Canada some stores will accept American cash as payment, but by law have to still give Canadian change. I worked in a city that got a lot of American tourists, and it was crazy how often someone would get really frustrated with us for not giving them American change. I had someone even accuse me of lying about it being the law. To what end, lady? Edit. It's been pointed out that this may not actually be a law. It may just be the rules at the store or some accounting thing. It's been like 10 years, so the details are fuzzy. My top 2 Canadian dealing with Americans buying stuff stories are trying to very slowly and clearly explain the cost, and them dropping a bunch of small change on the counter and refusing to try to understand the coins ... which are all literally named the same thing and shaped the same as theirs. Quarter, nickel, dime. Yes, the pictures are different, but come on. And someone yelling at me in a strong southern accent asking if we take English money here, by which she meant USD. Totally unaware that English is both the language of the province she was in, so her language wasn't a good enough identifier of her currency, as well as being representative of a whole other place with actual English money. I worked at a famous tourist location in the UK. We would see thousands of people from around the globe coming and going on a daily basis. After a couple months there I grew very accustomed to how different cultures approached the world and new environments. Americans were always a wild card. As a general rule, Americans weren't afraid to start a conversation with you, whether it was an Apache helicopter pilot or a recently divorced woman who thought you asking if they were exploring by themselves was an invitation to have wild sex later on in the evening. They always had a story to share and were always happy to indulge you. This is how we started a conversation we wished we never did, with a simple comment about the awful weather. It was a wet and blustery day, truly one would hope not to come across on your holiday, but humorously expected in the UK. An American man walks in and loudly proclaimed, "Gee, that's some weather you guys have here, eh?" "Hi, yes. Well, don't worry, we've got the heaters on. We also sell whiskey in the shop if you want something a bit more potent." My colleague laughed. "Oh no, I don't want to go down that road again. I wouldn't be able to control myself," the man said with a grin that indicated he was joking. "Haha, okay then. I'm barely holding off the urge myself, so I know what you mean," again jested my colleague. "Yeah, I know it would be a bad idea," a sudden look of seriousness crossing the man's face. "My wife left me and I'm still trying to win her back, all because of my drinking." Ha, ha, well, I'm sure you will. "No, it's more complicated than that. It wasn't just the drink, but I got into harder drugs as well. I'm still trying to clean myself up." The still dripping umbrella he was holding lent to the awkwardness. It had been 30 seconds and we were now on the verge of counseling a man we had just met. "Well, I imagine you're doing the right thing. Is your wife with you?" A stupid question that only prolonged our suffering. "No, she's back in the States. I just went on a trip by myself to clear my head. You know, try and get my priorities straight." "Understandable. Well, you enjoy the sights, sir. It's plenty warm inside." "Will do, thank you," a large grin appearing on his face as if he had shared nothing but pleasantries. He proceeded to peruse the shop, pausing at the glass cases holding the whiskey for an uncomfortable amount of time. "Say, these sure do look like great malts though. I would love to try them." Unsure as to if it was an offhand comment or a genuine interest, we laughed but quickly turned to latch on to the next customer who walked in, eagerly giving them a 5-star experience. The man walked on through the shop and thankfully into the main hall. I was at a lavender farm in the south of France a few years ago. 2 coachloads of American tourists pull up. They all got out on the standard "you won't get long enough to really see this place" type tour. One lady very proudly states she is an expert on lavender and that this place was cute, but it's all fake. The lavender isn't the right color. There were bees and other insects all over it. The whole farm smelled amazing and there was a harvest taking place. It was very real. My son did this while standing on one of the memorial blocks. He was only 5 though, and had been hugely impressed by the statues we'd seen around central Berlin. While we were distracted by his older brother and 2 son clambered onto a block and tried to throw a military salute. It was winter and his thick jacket meant he couldn't bend his arm. When wife and I turned around, it was to see him standing solemnly to attention, arm outstretched in a Roman salute, in front of a group of horrified tourists. We both grabbed him and hauled him off, before scuttling away in shame. That was 15 years ago and we still talk about a time son wanted to be a statue. I was in a tour group in Tajikistan and we were inside a local's house who had invited us in for tea, and he was telling us about his family and how many children they have, etc. The only American in the group piped up and asked, "What contraception does your wife use? Does she use herbs or something?" Everyone was just aghast and he politely avoided the question. Then there was a long awkward silence, and so she asked again. At that point another tour member interjected and said, "Okay, I think it's time for us to leave. Thanks for having us." When I came down from the Fuji summit after an 8-hour climb and 4-hour descent with 3 layers of clothing to protect myself from the weather, an American with a selfie stick, in t-shirt and shorts, asked me where Mount Fuji was. I told him we are on Mount Fuji. It's a big mountain, volcano. "But where is the summit?" I pointed to the summit and told him it's about 8 hours that way. This guy thought he could just come in with his selfie stick, grab a few quick selfies on the summit and return to Tokyo. Lol. I used to work in a high-end restaurant. 5 or 6 course meals are the standard, so people take their time to eat, chat and enjoy the evening for at least 2 to 3 hours. It is normal to have half an hour in between meals. If we would serve faster, the guests would complain about the food being served too fast. Anyway, this table of mostly local people plus one American woman being very loud with a thick, I guess, New York accent was complaining after 3 minutes after every course where her food was. First I explained the above. The rest of the table was also getting a bit awkward about her behavior. She kept complaining though, telling how incredibly disappointed she was. I kept explaining that the food we serve is freshly made, it takes time to prepare, and that the whole idea is to enjoy the evening and with the people you are. She just would get concept and react with so much disbelief. "Lady, you're abroad. If you want to stuff your face with food in under 5 minutes, go to a fast food chain, or even better, stay at home. Edit. Wow, thanks for the award and all the upvotes. South African here. Americans tend to have this habit where they will climb out of their vehicle in the middle of a game reserve, get attacked by a wild animal because they wanted to get closer or try to pet it, and then cry about it. I thought people that come from the country that has grizzly bears and mountain lions would be a bit more cautious around wild animals. Also, the shock they experience when they realize there are cities here and not everyone is living in mud huts. Iceland. We get a lot of tourism when there isn't a pandemic, and about half are American. It's mostly just ignorance and the refusal to accept that things work differently here. Also, while most people here speak English to some degree, there are a few tourists that are furious about it not being the default language and businesses that aren't even connected to tourism. God forbid we speak our own language at work. Oh, and Northern Lights. There's a ton of people who seem to think we can just flick a switch and have the Northern Lights appear. This reminds me of some American tourists who got mentioned in our local paper in northern Norway. Above the Arctic Circle. They apparently wanted to sue the travel company because the midnight sun was just the normal sun. For those who don't know, above the Arctic Circle the sun doesn't set below the horizon in midsummer, it just goes from sunset straight into sunrise, and nighttime can be as bright as daytime sometimes, depending on weather and topography. It's amazing, even for us living there, and definitely worth the visit. Along with some stunning nature, these people apparently thought there were two different suns orbiting North Norway and felt tricked because it was just the same sun. Not inappropriate but asshole-ish and weird. Guy records me and friends shooing the herds of cows who were sitting in the middle of road, occasionally happen, in a car while yelling yo and recording. Dude starts commenting and slapping the cows passing by. Spook one, and some of them starts to speed up a little bit, made me and my friends in slight danger of getting rammed by a cow. Dude passed by us and then recorded our face while saying something that made my friend mad, and then proceed to squash the shit while he was passing by. Met him at the restaurant too. He ate the bananas leaves that's served for the purpose of plating the nasi lemak, until he was halfway done and the uncle next table told him that's not for eating. He laughed and spit it all on the plate instead of the tissue. He almost walked in the middle of the town without a shirt and literally threw stuff at the monkeys on the electric line, which made them scramble inside the forest, and some went to the primary school, which is in front of the forest. He was the main topic of that week gossips. Last time I was in Moscow, had an hour to kill before the train to the airport, so we went for a coffee at Starbucks. A Russian tour guide comes in with a group of 50-60-year-old fat couples, who proceeded to order coffee and tried to pay with dollar bills. When informed that this was not legal tender, the conversation went something like, "I know this frappuccino costs exactly $3 in Starbucks, sorry, only rubles or credit card works fine. You're gonna take dollars? This is an American company and I'm an American citizen with American money. Sorry, is not money in Russia, but credit card is fine. I'm an American citizen and I'm paying you these $3 for a coffee that costs $3. Sorry, price is 150 ruble." After which she shouted for a manager, shouted at the tour guide and shouted at her husband for not helping. This just happened yesterday. We were in a park, where there is also a museum with a big staircase, and on the wall of the staircase there were some plaques commemorating the architects of the building, their name, when they lived, and a few words about them are written on them. So I think it is pretty clear what those are, even if they are in a foreign language. And next to those there are some wreaths, just as a sign of respect and also decoration. Now on to what happened. Some tourists went there. One girl grabbed a wreath that was attached to the wall, put it on her head like a tiara or something, and started taking pictures of herself. I had to go there and tell them that this is not the purpose they are to be used for. Not tourism, but in my workplace in England. I used to work for a British heritage suit company and I would work night shift to take orders from America. Australia and Canada. I never had any problems with Australians or Canadians, but at least once or twice minimum a night I would receive calls from American people making prank calls and making fun of me for being English. They would call me wanker and other British swear words and talk in silly voices asking if I were drinking tea. Undoubtedly I was, but that's not important. Sometimes they would stay on the phone for ages asking me to say certain words, and because of the standards of the company we had to oblige unless they were swears, of course. Where's the goddamn castle? A Jewish friend of mine was relating the story of visiting his cousin in Israel, who was a tour guide, and took him on a ride along. American tour group, shown the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The guide relates how it's unlocked every morning by members of the same Muslim family for generations. Tour groups assure us no, that's obviously not true. Clearly doesn't happen, until one pipes up actually. I thought I saw something like that on CNN. And the tour group then starts with the wow, amazing, shown the hill of Golgotha, where Christ was supposedly crucified. Gee, I thought it'd be bigger. An American tourist orders a turkey dinner at a restaurant, and then flags down the server to let her know that the kitchen forgot the cranberry sauce. The server comes back with it in a small dish. After she finished her meal, someone at the table pointed out that she'd forgotten to use the cranberry sauce that she asked for. She says, "Oh, I don't like cranberry sauce," so the person at the table follows up with, "Then why did you ask the server to bring you some?" Her answer, "Because it comes with the meal." I had dinner with an American in China. He asked for water in English, and the waiter didn't understand. He spoke up and repeated himself in a patronizingly slow voice, and again the waiter, not being able to speak English, didn't understand. I asked for the water in Chinese and the waiter left. The American then said, "It's so infuriating here sometimes. There are many things that can be annoying and inconvenient in China, but simply expecting people to understand your language is unreasonable as fuck." GTA V. I know, but it's like this. Remember when there was a time when GTA V was a well-liked and respectable game, not just something everyone bitched about, or not just a game we still play only because a new one hasn't come out yet? Well, when I was just 10, during Christmas break 2013, I finally get the game to work due to the first disk I had scratched up. When the installation finished and the game loaded, there was so much joy in me. I got to experience something that I haven't experienced since. It's indescribable what I felt when I got it to load. It spawned my love for video games. Sure, I played games before, but it was mostly family-friendly stuff I wasn't too interested in. During late 2013, my parents were going through a divorce. Around mid-2014, divorce finalized. My mom loses her job. We had to move, had to meet new people, had to live with a family friend during the weekdays to finish school, who happened to live a half-hour away from the school. Why mention this? Well, that unexplainable feeling I had was during a time before it got difficult, when life was just a bit easier, despite a divorce going on around me. If I can just experience a time when life felt easy and blissful again, I'd be happy. I know mine is a bit more personal, but at least that explains it. Might and Magic 4, first-person tile-based open-world RPG, the first open-world RPG I ever played. The idea that, once you've completed the tutorial town, you can literally go anywhere in the world, subject to being killed by higher-level monsters, blew my teenage mind. Prior to that, all games were fairly linear, and then I combined it with them and M5 to make the world of Xen, and now you've got two open-world games stacked on top of each other, needing to go back and forth to finish all new quests. I genuinely felt happy roaming those pixelated roads fighting flat enemies, happy in a way that I've never been able to regain. Warcraft 2. I was into PCs in the 90s with one of my friends, my dad, and his dad. We were just obsessed with the technology, the games, the BBSs. I slept over my friend's one night. He had a Pentium 100, beast of a PC back then. I woke up early, he slept in. I jumped on his PC, start sniffing around in DOS. I see a directory named War 2. Run the game, I'm hooked instantly. Nave played a game like this. I hacked his computer and didn't eat anything until 2 p.m. lol. Then his mom got us McDonald's and we played basketball, but my mind was still on Warcraft. What a game. I got my grandma to bring me to Toys R Us to buy it a few weeks later on my birthday. Good times.